everybody. Welcome back to the kitchen. I'm here with Noah Johnson, who is the head chef.
Yes, sir.
Head chef here at Wild Heaven Brewery, and they're doing a collab event with their beers and Bulleit, and they have a phenomenal new menu going on. Now, they're not a barbecue joint, but man, let me tell you, this guy knows what he's doing with some barbecue. Let's take a look at what he's got here. Tell me about this.
Okay, so right here we have our seasoned and smoked brisket. It is a 8-hour braise. We're going to be working on the smoking process right now. Right now it's not smoked, but we're moving into a direction where we're going to be smoking it for about 4 to 5 hours, and then we're going to be braising it for about 6, to where it comes off as a nice, good, clean pole. What I do is I take some of the rendered fat and some of the seasonings that I've rendered down in the fat. I take about 2 cups of that out of every time I make a brisket, and I pour it back into the meat after it's pulled, and I mix it back in. So it gets some of that rendered fat, juice, everything back into the meat. Yeah, and that's with the brisket.
So a little bit of flavor profile on the brisket. You get a nice, little bit of spiciness, a little bit of sweet. There's such a good pull on this. I mean, just look at how much this thing just pulls apart. As a KCBS judge, let me tell you, this is really delicious. There's a couple other things here that we want to talk about. We're standing in front of the pizza oven, but I think the next thing is the pork that you mentioned.
Yes, sir.
All right.
So this is a Sumac cilantro lime braised pork that we actually did this morning. Excuse me. We started by trimming some of the fat off, and we have one of our other beers here called ATL Easy Ale. It's an Atlantic United classic, and we braised it in that for we braised it since 8 this morning until about 15 minutes before this event. So it had been cooking all day. So Sumac is very earthy spice, a little spicy, a little bit of heat there. I tend to use it mostly on pork because on beef things, spiciness and the earthiness of beef doesn't tend to go very well with Sumac in my opinion, but things that have a heavier amount of fat on the top like pork tend to go better with those kinds of elements.
Well, let me tell you, again, we have a wonderful crust on this. I mean, I was just sitting there chewing it, and it's hard to hold the phone because, man, this is really good stuff. You established a great bark on this, despite the fact that it's not technically smoked.
Not technically smoked.
There you go. All right, last thing you wanted to talk about was the eggplant here?
Yeah. So this is our fried eggplant. This is actually a completely 100% vegan battering of the eggplant. It is just cake flour and some water turned into a nice kind of more or less like thick pancake batter, and then you cover, and that's Japanese eggplant, so it's a little bit firmer, more of a meaty texture. Cover it in the paste, and then you throw it into panko crumbs, and that's it. You just freeze it overnight.
So it's got like this kind of sweet earthiness that eggplant tends to do. I really hope that you heard the crunch on this because that flaky sea salt, the extra panko, really gives it that extra hit of flavor. So this has been absolutely delicious. What do we got here? This is an extra beer that you poured me.
Yeah, this is the Eau de Mercy Brown Ale. This is the actual beer that I use to braise our beef.
Okay.
To braise our barbecue beef.
So when you're braising, that means that you're doing a lower, slower, but in a liquid.
In a liquid. Typically, when you're braising, you don't want to fully submerge what you're cooking in a liquid. You typically want to do about a quarter to about halfway fill in the pan.
That's why the top gets the browning.
Exactly. It browns the top, but also it steams, evaporates the liquid on the bottom. It's almost like steams the meat to where it's nice and pullable.
Gotcha. So let's taste this is the
Eau de Mercy.
Eau de Mercy. First of all, you poured it great. This is a wonderful head.
Oh, thank you.
It's got this dark, nutty flavor. And I mean, you really taste this when you taste the brisket. It gets that sweetness. It gets that,
Indeed.
this is a winter beer for sure. I mean, it's got all that earthiness without being too sweet, being a little nutty, and not being super heavy like a porter or a stout.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, this has been absolutely delicious. You've got to come to Wild Heaven Brewery and get some of their food, not just some of their beer. Let's talk to some other people here.
Josh actually gets the credit for making this one. I make some of the beers here, but not all of them. We've had so much fun with all these collaborations, and most of what's so exciting for us as brewers is contemplating what can we do with this amazing barrel. And this one was particularly interesting, unusual, rare, and that it's the 10-year barrels. And I think as far as bourbons go, the 10-year Bulleit is the creme de la creme of all brown liquor. And so for us to be able to do something with that, to contemplate what can we do beer-wise that complements all of those flavors, because it's so nuanced and elegant. That bourbon is so unique. And how do we make something that complements the delicate nature of it, but also is robust enough that it becomes a nice companion? And how do we not destroy the intent of the beer with an assertive barrel? And so we had the idea, of course we love big Belgian style beers, so we had the idea we're going to make a quadruple, but we want it to be interesting and really play off of the kind of spicy, kind of the natural vanilla clovey kind of notes in the barrel. So we made a spiced quad. Josh, I'll let you talk about it here.
So the Belgian quad we made, we wanted to take something similar to our Eschaton just because it's tried and true. We love that beer, but we wanted to kind of, riff on that a little bit, do something a little bit different, make something that we were sure was going to be very drinkable. Took that beer, fermented it, put it into the barrels, and then we added some orange peel, some cocoa nibs, and some nice warm spices at the end. Cocoa nibs offer this really nice, fruity flavor. It's super cool. It blends exceptionally well with the barrels. So
and one thing with the cocoa nibs too is that what we discovered, we love cocoa nibs. We've made a lot of beers in the past with cocoa nibs. And if you just add cocoa nibs to a beer, you can literally wait until your kids graduate from college before it's going to taste like anything. If you take cocoa nibs and you basically rehydrate them with Bulleit bourbon, it's a whole other ballgame. And
that's how you access all those flavors.
Yeah, the alcohol extracts all those beautiful, alcohol-soluble flavors in the cocoa nibs, and so you get this rich, chocolatey depth in a fraction of the time. Actually, you get way more out of that process. So these were cocoa nibs that were rehydrated in the 10-year Bulleit bourbon, then added to the barrels, and I mean, you really get it. The chocolate.
Yeah, you can definitely taste it. It's wonderful.
Hey. So we're at the bar here at Wild Heaven at this very exclusive event, which is a combo of the Wild Heaven beer with Bulleit bourbon. And I'm here with Kate, who's been mixing up cocktails all night long.
Yeah, Kate Whiteneck here from Atlanta, Georgia.
Now we have something very special because we have a couple of very limited local things here. So what are you mixing up?
So right now I'm mixing up a black walnut old fashioned, and I prefer a split base old fashioned. So that's what we'll be having.
So when you say split base, what does that mean?
It's 2 ounces of whiskey, so I prefer to do an ounce of rye and then an ounce of bourbon.
And you're using both ones?
I am.
So a rye is going to have a little bit of a rougher flavor profile. I love Bulleit for their cherry flavor. It is my go-to mixer. I've been known to sip it over ice, but that isn't necessarily my favorite. But the great thing here is the black walnut syrup.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So I've partnered here locally, since I am from Atlanta, with a small batch syrup company. So they do a lot of simple syrups. I like the black walnut because I guess we're almost in winter, but kind of like fall, winter, nutty flavors that combine well with the caramel notes of the bourbon, the herbal notes of the rye, and match made in Wild Heaven.
There you go. So let's see what we got here.
All
right, we got our half ounce of rye.
I trust you intrinsically, so whatever.
Whole ounce each rye, and your standard.
And then I don't like sweet old fashions, notably. I'm more of like a heavy hand, so I do maybe less than a quarter ounce of the syrup.
So I tried the black walnut syrup a little bit earlier, completely on its own. It has this lovely balance between being a little bit of viscosity, a little bit of sweetness, and this good amount of earthiness, bitterness, because it's a walnut. It works phenomenally in a Manhattan or an old fashioned.
And then everything is better with aromatic bitters.
Gotta have your bitters.
House Angostura is my go-to as a bartender.
Now I noticed that you're not shaking this.
No, you want to dilute the cocktail, or else it would just be straight booze, and you like to have like a little bit of balance. But shaking it, to me, I think dilutes it a little too much. So I prefer a slow stir method, just to sort of like ease the flavors together and create a nice little balanced cocktail.
Excellent. Now, if you don't have a bar spoon, if you don't have one of these lovely glasses here at home, you can absolutely stir this in a pitcher or any sort of cocktail mixer that you have with a large spoon, with a knife, with whatever you've got. You don't need to be bougie about it. Cocktails are not, there's no golden gate here.
No, we're all just doing the best we can with what
Absolutely.
we got. My sister actually has used, instead of like a 10 shaker, she'll use like a protein shaker. She doesn't have one, so whatever gets you where
Whatever
you're going,
you've got.
Yeah, I'm happy
Them both to be
Happy to help.
So we had
All right, straining over lice with a Luxardo cherry, which is actually very different from a maraschino or some other cherries that you might be familiar with. Luxardo cherries are going to be much darker, have a much more earthiness, and the syrup that they come with is a lot darker and sweeter. Now, careful, a jar of Luxardo cherries is just going to run you about $20. And they're not cheap, but I guarantee you they're worth it. And the worst thing in the world is seeing a leftover Luxardo in somebody's cocktail at a bar.
Amen.
Always eat your Luxardos. All right.
And if not, give it to a friend.
Do not give it to a friend. So, what do you call this?
So this is, I guess, just a black walnut split-based old-fashioned.
Black walnut split-based old-fashioned. Let's take a taste.
we wanted to go with like that Belgian theme and that triple and that quad.
Absolutely lovely. This is extremely approachable. You get the orange, you get the cherry, you get the bourbon, you get a little bit of that roughness from the rye. You could use this as an aperitif. You could use this as a digestif. Or a nightcap. It is dangerously delicious and smooth. So, Katie, thank you so much. Cheers to you. We're here at Wild Heaven. This is their collab event with Bulleit Bourbon. My go-to when it comes to a mixing cocktail. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Graham.
Like, follow, subscribe, and we will see you next time.